Hello, I'm Andrew Gill and welcome to the launch of Ageing Well in a Changing Time. With me, the Honourable Luke Donnellan, Minister for Child Protection, Disability, Ageing and Carers, and the Commissioner for Senior Victorians, Gerard Mansour. We'd like to acknowledge the peoples of the Wurundjeri and Boon Wurrung nations, and we'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and all First Nation peoples watching this program. And happy NAIDOC week to you all. Hello, Minister. It's great to see you again. Haven't seen each other for a while. How are you going?
Happy, smiling. Been a difficult time for everybody, but we're going well.
We are going to be hearing from you very shortly and officially. And Gerard, today is a day when your report, Ageing Well in a Changing World, is launched. You've been on the radio. Everyone wants to know about it. We're going to hear about it first today.
Exciting, isn't it?
It's very good. All right. Well, I think without further ado, what about if we start thinking about this in another way? Because over the last few months, I've had the pleasure of working with the Minister and Gerard, but it's always been on Zoom and mobile phones. But it's great to see them both in person today. While we are all together, we are physically distanced, and while we're on camera, we are not wearing masks. All our crew are wearing masks, and everyone is very safely protected. To all of you out there at home watching, we hope it's an informative and enjoyable session. Later, we'll be discussing the report with the Commissioner and our two expert panellists from COTA, the Council on the Ageing, CEO Tina Hogarth-Clark, and the CEO of Australian Multicultural Community Services, Elizabeth Drozd. If you have any question or comment and you are on our webpage, you can send this in via the Q&A box. If you're watching on the Facebook stream, you'll also see your comment. You can see the box there right now. All right, we're seconds away from hearing officially from our Minister, the Honourable Luke Donnellan. Then Gerard will be outlining the key findings of his report, and then the Minister will respond. And as I said, this will be followed by our expert panellists, Elizabeth and Tina, with their observations and some of your questions. Marcel was a delight and very wise and joyful. You may have recognised her son, the ever-young 70-year-old Jack Levi, alias Elliot Goblet. We interviewed both of them in Marcel's house on her mobile phone with lots of laughter. Now, Gerard, we have two experts to discuss your report and their views. I'd like to welcome Tina and Elizabeth. Tina, down this end, is ready to go, I think. Tina is the CEO of COTA, and she's been there since last year. And so, Tina Hogarth-Clark, good to see you. Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm glad. And also our other very special guest over here, Elizabeth Drozd, who is from the Australian Multicultural Community Services. She's also the CEO there. We've also had some comments coming in too, Gerard, which I'll get to if I can. But most importantly, if we start with you, Tina, first, you just heard the report. You've also heard the Minister too, which is great. So, Tina, give us your sense of what you take out of that report first.
Look, I think what I take out of that report is the resilience of older people and how important it is for older people to participate in the decision-making processes that affect them and form a way to ensure that they have a voice in things that affect them. I think is probably the most important message that I've taken from that.
And that looks so important, isn't it? And we know that, you know, again, when you hear it, you understand it. And I think sometimes if you're living it, it's a bit harder to understand that. Now, Elizabeth, I love what you have on your LinkedIn page. You say you are a champion of anti-ageism, which is just awesome. Can you give us a little sense? I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word, just awesome, but I will anyway for a second. Can you give us your first takeout on what you heard from Gerard and his report?
So what I really like is about the report is I do have a favourite page, and it's what Gerard talked about, and it's the attributes of ageing well. And for me, the number one is a positive attitude, which is really an overarching attribute, and that it would be great for every senior to adopt. I remember this year when I got my senior citizens card or seniors card, I was so excited about it. I've been hearing about this card for years, and now I have it. So that's really exciting. And I think, how do we embrace as a society, as a community, and as individuals, the next 20, 30 years for those of us that are 60 years of age, because hopefully this is what we will have on average. So that's quite exciting.
And Elizabeth, you've worked in this sector for a long time, so obviously you're, let's call it, prepared, and you embrace Senior Victorians. How do people do that? How do people actually do the embracing? Because some people don't like to think about getting older.
That's very true, and clearly I think it's important that we help those that perhaps don't find aging exciting, and because in a way we can certainly make the best time of those years, and they can be our best years. So if people don't have that sort of attitude, that positive attitude, then certainly there are support services to make that happen. There are lots of exciting activities, and that relates to the second attribute, which is that, to have a purpose in life. What is our reason for getting up in the morning? And that varies from individual to individual. And of course, that varies also for people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Their reasons for getting up in the morning may be quite different. I know gardening is one of them, of course, which is a great activity. It's one of the best activities that we can have at any age, of course. But positive attitude, can I encourage everybody who is watching, and hopefully everybody who is watching has a positive attitude about aging, but how do we help those that perhaps are not as positive about aging for one reason or another without judging that? And I have no doubt that Jared and the Victorian government can assist with that. So we are all walking the path together and making aging more positive and exciting.
I love it. Jared is nodding his head in agreement, which is good. Now, there are some questions that have just come in. Oh, thank you so much. This is a really good question. It links a little bit to what you were talking about, Elizabeth. I might ask you both to respond to this, Tina, as well. How can we capture the stories of at least 1/3 of older people who have language barriers, why they are often excluded from surveys? So maybe, Jared, I might ask you first. Did we exclude people with maybe English as a second language from another culture in this survey?
Yeah, it was a really important question to us. What we did is we actually got libraries to very actively assist. So we encouraged as many people as possible, if they couldn't actually get onto the survey, to be able to go to a library and get some assistance and complete the survey that way. But I was always of the view that a survey was a limited mechanism to be able to consult with older people. I always knew that there'd be a bias in the survey to maybe the weller, healthier people, and so that's why I built in the community consultations. I felt that just relying on an online survey was never going to give me the depth of conversation and insight that I actually needed to get. So to me, it's about doing as many things as we can in the survey, but also to accept that surveys on their own can't give us the insights into people that have mobility challenges, that simply don't use computers. And there'll always, in my mind, be a role for face-to-face consultation. And so, to me, the methodology was really important. It was wonderful to get such a high response. I didn't expect that, and it was only open for a couple of weeks. To get nearly 5,000 people that took the time to express their views, I think is wonderful going forward. But I would never just rely on an online survey for me as a commissioner to do my role properly.
And I suppose too, Elizabeth, there are lots of very proud and very active multicultural groups. I know working with the Seniors Festival, there are so many groups that are very active and have been active for many years. What do you see about making sure that those different voices, those different diversity groups are actually heard and integrated into, let's call it, planning by government?
So we all know that it's very important for services and any initiatives to be inclusive, and that's what we're really talking about. So it's about access and equity. Are our services and supports and information, is it accessible for those that may be experiencing language barriers? Unfortunately, the earlier generations of migrants who came here in the 1950s, 1960s didn't have the same opportunities to acquire English compared to, I think, what is happening now. From my experience, it is easier because there were just different times, and we have got much better in that overall. So one is to be inclusive. The good thing is that there are many various ethnic and multicultural organizations, and for me, when I think about the report and of course the challenge when it comes to implementation, it really has to be done in a partnership model, and we all in it together. We often talk about it. We talk about it during COVID, and clearly not one agency, not one organization, not one government can achieve all of this without actually working together, each of us contributing our strengths, building on that, and how can we do that? And I have no doubt that the goodwill that exists within ethnic communities is there to make sure that we assist and do whatever we can, and hopefully we can get the assistance that will be needed to make that happen.
I love that. Tina, if I can talk to you for a second, another one of the questions has come in. How can we support older people to maintain their own mental health? Is it an area that CODA as an organisation are looking at? You've got different programs.
We do certainly have different programs, and I guess at the core of all of that is maintaining health and well-being, preventing isolation. And I think an important aspect of mental health is not only your physical health and maintaining your physical health, but also those connections with family and friends, and that was something that came out very strongly in the report as well. Connecting, I think we've seen even during COVID, how being disconnected from your family particularly and not being able to visit your grandchildren has been one of the major issues that we are seeing through our phone lines. You know, we've spent 9 months, I haven't seen the new baby, or I haven't seen my grandchildren for such a long time, and it actually has a really a large impact on people, and I think, you know, we may have underestimated that earlier, but now we can't underestimate it because COVID has really brought that to the fore. So I think certainly with any of our programs, we embed within any of our programs, in any of our forums, any time that we connect with older people and talk to older people, we always have that social aspect, and we've managed to try that a little bit online. It's much more difficult to do that online. We certainly can't serve biscuits and tea online, but, you know, as much as possible we've been able to do that because it is a really, really important aspect that people have a voice, that they can talk to each other, that they can test their ideas with their peers, and that they can participate in the decisions that are made around them.
And that's, again, we all know the same parts of this whole challenge for the world has been, how do we do this connection? I imagine if we didn't have the internet, we would have even had less connection. We probably would have had phone lines, but we have become, I think, Elizabeth, you'd agree that we've become very organised with lots of services, and actually maybe even discovering services that we didn't even know existed, and maybe out of this there might be some new relationships and, you know, that can come out of this. This is another question has just come in. Maybe, Jude, I might ask you this first and maybe ask Tina and Elizabeth second. If isolation, loneliness came up as a barrier to ageing well in 2016 and again in 2019, how can we be sure that it's not going to be listed in your next report?
I think I can confidently predict it will be in the next report. And there's probably two reasons for that. I think when you look at the theory, and I had a chance to delve into that in more detail in 2016, it is a bit of a protective measure for us. Lots of us go into a sense of isolation and loneliness as a trigger for us to reconnect socially. And so it's a very natural, normal thing. The challenge arises when people can't find that natural connection back. And it reminds me a lot of, there are many people listening that had all different professional backgrounds. I originally trained as a youth worker. And we back then used to talk about it as outreach work. That, you know, there are people that are so resilient and will find our organisations. You know, they'll find CODA, they'll find Elizabeth's organisation. But there's always going to be a group of people in our community who we've got to reach out to for a whole range of reasons. Late last year, I had an opportunity to meet some people from recently arrived communities, you know, people that have come into our country at the age of 70. So if people don't reach out to them, how are they going to connect in our community? So it will be in my report next time, but hopefully what's happening is we've got better pathways, the numbers are going down, and we've been able to name the strategies that work and encourage organisations to think not about just the people who are finding us, but the way we can find others as well.
And I think it's a really important point, isn't it? Because I think an old-fashioned approach would be, well, you know, if you need help, you need to go and find it, but often the people who most need help can't find it. Elizabeth, as a closing comment, if you could not wave your magic wand, I don't like the expression, but what would you give as something you would love to have as front of focus for Gerard when he's actually looking to this great new world in the next couple of years?
Look, I think it's important that we look at the innovation that has happened during the last 8 months during COVID. Look, I am just amazed what staff have been able to come up with. So we ran groups and groups, and we couldn't run any of them. And a service substitution had to be found. So there's bingo in Italian, Polish, Spanish, Macedonian. Yes, it's not ideal. People are longing to meet in a park wherever they can. And in fact, I've been personally asked when the seniors can meet as a group, and I said, look, I'm not able to approve it because AMCS may be able to get $100,000 fine. I just cannot do it. So we just have to be patient, and people understand it. But let's look at the innovation, the things that have been done, because we had to innovate and we had to do it very quickly. And I know it's some organisations, including mine, we will continue with some of the things because it's very practical. I understand that there's about 400 people now watching us talking about it. Imagine organising an event of 400 people. So yes, it's not ideal, but I think if we combine that online and the digital divide is very, very important. And there are some amazing success stories, how people are using, we have an Arabic-speaking WhatsApp group. You know, unfortunately, I'm told it only allows 8 people, so therefore we have to run few of those groups because more and more people want to participate. So let's look at the innovation, the best initiatives that are available, that have happened, and build on that.
I love that. I know we're nearly at time, everybody, but I was talking to a fabulous emergency doctor at Cabrini Hospital, and he was talking about how very early on they actually worked out they needed to buy a lot of iPads so that people in intensive care in potentially COVID situations could actually communicate. And they saw that very early on as a really important way to let people get to see their friends and family. So again, communication and innovation through technology sounds good. Tina, when you're writing your little note to Gerard, the Commissioner, what are you going to be saying to him?
Oh, I never write little notes to Gerard. They're always very long. I think I'll pick up on similarly to what Elizabeth was saying, that we have, during COVID, again, we do a lot of outreach, we do a lot of forums, we do a lot of connections with older people. We go out to visit them. And so we had to innovate as well. And it was interesting in the beginning, the reluctance to do that. I'll just wait till it all gets back to normal and we can meet again. But as the time went on, we had more and more people that are willing to take on the challenge of learning. And I think the next take-home message is we do need to build on that. We do need to ensure that the people do have access to computers that are up to date, so they can actually get onto Zoom, as opposed to the really old boxes that some of the older people have. Not all of them. And to give them the devices so that they are able to achieve, to be able to connect in that way, and to be able to attend more meetings. It's particularly important, I think, out in rural and regional areas as well, which typically are very difficult to reach. You do rely on them coming into a community, a large community centre, and so this will enable us to do a lot more work, I think, into those more outlying and outreached areas.
Excellent. Well, everyone, that is the end of this broadcast. Thank you to our guests, Tina Hogarth-Clarke, Elizabeth Drozd, and the Commissioner, Gerard Mansour, for Senior Victorians. Always a pleasure. And all the best with the new Senior Victorian Advisory Group. I don't think I got that in earlier on. Hopefully some of our viewers will be able to get involved. Special thanks to the Honourable Minister Luke Donnellan for his time, energy and fun. It's always good to be around him. Thank you for your questions and comments and involvement online. Don't forget, download this report. This is a real live paper copy, but you can actually download this right now if you'd like to. The summary report's fantastic. And to farewell us on the program, we want to show you our street philosopher Swampy, who has been answered a question each week on the Victorian Seniors Festival, reimagined. You may just recognise the questioner. We hope you all continue to age well. Goodbye for now.